There's a woman named Patricia in a Vanguard case study, not by her real name obviously, but the profile is common enough that it might as well be someone on your street. She's 41, she's been at her company for 6 years. She has about $47,000 in her 401k, which frankly she's kind of proud of because she started late. Then her car dies. Not the alternator, not the brakes. The transmission goes on a Tuesday morning in a grocery store parking lot, and the repair estimate is $4,000. She doesn't have $4,000 sitting in a savings account. But she knows the money is sitting somewhere. So she logs into her retirement portal that night, and within 72 hours, the withdrawal is processing. The crisis feels solved. And before we get to what Patricia didn't see, if you want to make smarter money decisions like this, the kind most people only learn the hard way, take a second to subscribe to Kai Invests. It helps more than you think, and it keeps this kind of insight coming your way. But here's what Patricia doesn't see on that confirmation screen. She doesn't just lose $4,000. She loses roughly 10% of that to an early withdrawal penalty because she's under 59 and a half. She loses another chunk to federal and possibly state income tax because the IRS treats that withdrawal as ordinary income. So to net $4,000, she probably needed to pull closer to $6,000. And the $6,000 she pulled out? If it had stayed invested for another 24 years until she retired at 65, assuming even a modest average return, it could have grown to over $25,000. She paid $25,000 to fix a transmission? That's the math almost nobody does before they click confirm. And Patricia is not unusual. According to data from Vanguard's most recent report, a record 6% of workers in 401k plans made hardship withdrawals in 2025, up from around 2% before the pandemic. The median amount withdrawn was just $1,900. That's not a fortune. That's a medical bill, a rent shortfall, a car repair. But across millions of accounts, those small leaks create enormous long-term damage. Even more striking, research shows that roughly 1 in 3 Americans who leave a job cash out their entire 401k balance instead of rolling it over. Among hourly workers, that number climbs to over 40%. This isn't recklessness. It's a system where people are under real pressure, and the retirement account is the only pool of money they can see. So, why does this keep happening to smart, responsible, hard-working people? Because the human brain is not built to protect a number on a screen that you can't touch for 20 or 30 years. Behavioral economists describe something called present bias, which is essentially the brain's tendency to treat a problem happening right now as enormously more important than a consequence happening decades from now. The overdue bill on the counter feels 10 times heavier than the retirement projection on a website you check twice a year. And that bias gets amplified by a second force, the emotional spending loop that kicks in the moment financial stress hits. When you're already anxious about money, your decision-making narrows. You stop comparing options. You stop calculating. You just want the pain to stop. So you reach for the fastest source of relief, and for millions of Americans, that source is the 401k. There's also something quieter that almost never gets discussed. When people do tap their retirement accounts, the psychological permission it creates is more damaging than the withdrawal itself. Research on financial behavior frequently shows that once someone breaks the seal on a retirement account, they're significantly more likely to do it again. The mental barrier drops. The account shifts from being untouchable to being available. And that shift in identity from "this is my future" to "this is my backup" is incredibly hard to reverse. It's like keeping a jar of cash on the counter versus locking it in a safe bolted to the floor. The money in the jar gets spent first, every time, not because you need it more, but because it's there. There's another layer to this that rarely comes up. Many people don't realize that pulling money from their 401k can bump them into a higher tax bracket for that year. If you're already earning $50,000 or $60,000 and you withdraw another $10,000 from your retirement plan, that extra $10,000 gets stacked on top of your income. Depending on where you live, that could mean losing a third or more of the withdrawal to taxes and penalties combined. Surveys frequently report that a large percentage of people who take early withdrawals are surprised by the tax bill they receive the following April. They thought they were pulling $10,000. They actually netted about 6 or 7, and then they owe additional tax on top of it. It's a trap that doesn't reveal itself until months later. So, what should you do instead? The answer isn't willpower. Willpower is what people rely on right before they break. The answer is building a system that makes touching the 401k structurally unnecessary. And it starts smaller than most people think. This week, the most impactful thing you can do is look at your checking account and set up an automatic transfer of even $25 or $50 into a separate savings account that you do not link to any payment app, any debit card, any shopping platform. This is not your investment account. This is your Don't Touch the 401k account. It's your buffer between life's emergencies and your future. Make it boring. Make it invisible. Make it automatic. That's the full point. This month, take 30 minutes to look at your actual 401k. Not the balance, the structure. Are you getting the full employer match? Because if your employer matches up to, say, 4% and you're only contributing 2%, you're leaving free money behind every single paycheck. That match is an instant 100% return on your contribution, and there's virtually nothing else in finance that offers that. Also check whether your old 401k from a previous employer is still sitting orphaned somewhere. Surveys show that millions of Americans have old retirement accounts at former employers that they've never rolled over, and those accounts often sit in default conservative allocations that quietly underperform for years. Over the next year, your goal should be building that emergency buffer to a place where a $1,500 surprise doesn't send you to the retirement portal. Research from the Federal Reserve has consistently found that a significant share of Americans can't cover an unexpected $400 expense without borrowing. That's the gap. If you can close that gap, even partially, you remove the single most common reason people raid their retirement savings. You don't need to save 12 months of expenses by next January. You need to save enough that the next car repair, the next medical copay, the next school fee doesn't trigger a cascade that reaches your 401k. For most working households, getting to even $1,000 or $1,500 in that buffer account changes the entire dynamic. And here's the part that deserves to be said plainly. None of this means you're a bad person if you've already taken money out of your 401k. Life doesn't wait for your financial plan to be ready. Kids get sick, cars break, rent comes due whether the market is up or down. The point isn't guilt. The point is understanding the true cost so that the next time the pressure hits, you have a different path available. The system you build now, the automatic savings, the emergency buffer, The awareness of what that withdrawal actually costs you 20 years from now, that's what stands between you and a repeat of the same painful decision. Think about Patricia again. If she'd had even $2,000 in a separate emergency account, she could have covered half the repair out of pocket, put the other half on a short-term payment plan with the shop, and her $47,000 would still be compounding quietly in the background. 24 years from now, that difference isn't trivial. That difference might be the year she retires at 65 instead of 68. It might be the difference between choosing when to stop working and being told when to stop. That's what's really at stake. Every time someone says it's only a few $1,000s, it's never only a few $1,000s. It's the future those dollars were quietly building while you weren't watching.